Howdy everyone, David here from tabletoping.net, and today's review is the Dungeons and Dragons Basic Rules free PDF from the Wizards of the Coast website. That is basically the beginning or the basic rules, as it says, of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. And what this tutorial is going to basically entail is the differences between the basic rules and the Players Handbook, which is now officially out. So let's get started. First off, the lead designers for D&D 5e are pretty much Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford. There's a lot of other people that are also involved in this project as well, but Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford, those guys are pretty much the lead designers for 5e. So the PDF has quite a few sections in it. And first off, you can download this from dnd.com, or you can go to the Wizards of the Coast website, and there are several versions of this PDF. First off, there is a version that you're seeing on your screen now, which is sort of like a light sandy brown type of background, and then there is also a printer-friendly version as well that you can download that has a solid white background, and it's very easy on your ink or toner cartridge. So there's a lot of information. Actually, there's truly a lot of information in this free PDF that absolutely costs you nothing. It's 110 pages, and it basically has several classes, several races, and we're going to get into those. And then later, there's going to be a monster manual that's going to be added onto this, and also a Dungeon Master section as well. So you're basically getting an entire game for free from Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast. So it basically follows the same type of platform that a lot of the video games and MMOs have been following with, basically they let you enjoy part of the game, and then if you want to subscribe or purchase other things, then you have to, put some money up, and then you get the full Monty of everything else. And this is pretty much what the Basic Rules does towards the Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, and products from here on out. So there's the introduction section, and the introduction section is pretty much like the Player's Handbook, like other editions as well, where it pretty much just kind of goes into an overview of what a D&D session would be like, with the conversation and the narrative from the DM to the players. Talks a little about of the dice that you need. Talks about the major mechanic of the game, which is advantage and disadvantage. Now, when you get to part one, well, that's actually, and I'm sorry to go back a little bit, the introduction is pretty much the same as what's in the Player's Handbook. Now, part one, creating the character, pretty much the same as the Player's Handbook as well. You basically choose your class, your race, and this is an actual step-by-step process of everything that is, involved with creating a character, and then also past level 1 as well with EXP charts. Now, chapter 2 is your races. In the Player's Handbook, there's a lot more races, but in this free PDF, the Basic Rules PDF, there's 4 races. The Dwarf, and then there's the Hill and Mountain Dwarf. There's the Elf, which is the High and the Wood Elf. The Halfling, which is the Lightfoot and the Stout Halfling. And then there's the Human. Well, in the Player's Handbook, there's a lot more races. There's actually 9 more races in the Player's Handbook. Well, there's a total of 9 races in the Player's Handbook, so there's 5 more. But there's the Tiefling, there's going to be the Half-Orc, the Half-Elf, the Gnome, and the Dragonborn on top of these. Plus, I know that the Drow is also added in with the Player's Handbook. So you can see that all of the races, it goes by pretty much all the different types of names, how to name it, a little bit of background about each race, and then it also has all of the traits for the base of the halfling, for instance, and then there's also more bonuses depending on if you want to go Lightfoot or Stout. So it's actually really, really detailed, and it's a great tool. Now, chapter 3 is the classes, and there's 4 classes in this Basic Rules PDF. There is the Cleric, which you see now on the screen. You can also see that there is the Fighter. There is also going to be the Rogue, and there is also the wizard. Now, there are many types of other classes in the player handbook. So there's a total of 12 classes in the PHB. And there's only 4 classes here with 4 archetypes. But the other classes in the Player's Handbook are the Barbarian, the Bard, the Druid, the Monk, the Paladin, the Ranger, the Sorcerer, and the Warlock. And even though there's base classes, there's also archetypes as well. So, for instance, there is the champion for the fighter, and then there's an Eldritch Knight, and I believe there's also the gladiator. So, even though you're playing a fighter, you have archetype choices as well. So you get your baseline stuff for the fighter, and then you get your archetype, and it's great because it gives you a lot of variety. So that's pretty much the classes. There's a lot more variety that's going to be pretty much in the Player's Handbook. Now, Chapter 4 is pretty much how you choose the background and all of your traits for your character. And in this, I believe there are 5 backgrounds, which you can see that there's the Acolyte, you can see that there's the Criminal, there's also the Folk Hero, the Sage, and the Soldier. Now, when you choose one of these backgrounds, you're also going to be able to choose a personality trait. Well, roll a personality trait, an ideal, a bond, and a flaw. So this basically flushes out your character that gives you and your DM a great immersion for your character, which is great. Now, Chapter 5 is all about the equipment. And the equipment section is very important because there's a lot of things that go on with weapons, proficiencies. So this section is pretty much explaining everything, the currency conversions and starting gold and, how you add in armor proficient, how you add in your armor class with dex, and what armors can use dex bonuses, what armors can't, what the versatile property means on a weapon, or what reach is, and all of the different weights and encumbrances that actually go along with all of this weapon and armor. Now, the equipment and adventuring gear section is also very highly detailed. Now, as you can see on this right here, this page, there's 2 columns, solid columns of adventure and equipment. And you can also see that there is a slight description on what every single thing does. Like caltrops, it'll tell you, the caltrops, each caltrop pack encompasses a 5-foot square, and then there's a saving throw involved, and people can actually be slowed down. And it's great. Unlike previous editions, this actually has a lot of detail about what the caltrops do, or what ball bearings do, or what the holy water does, and it's great. Then it also goes into the tools, which is actually a big part of the classes, the backgrounds, and actually your skill checks as well. Also has other miscellaneous things like mounts, animals, also traveling, trade goods, and then also your lifestyle. So whenever you're not playing the game, your character can actually have a lifestyle. Does he want to live a very poor life, or does he want to live a very aristocratic? And depending on what type of lifestyle he wants to live, there's descriptions for each and prices of how much the character needs to pay, which is a great thing. And last but not least, there's a new thing that's added in, which is trinkets. So every character can pretty much do a 1d100 on character creation, and you can get some pretty cool things, which is kind of adds a little bit. And plus, it's good for the DM because the DM can plan something for that trinket that you have in your possession. Chapter 6 is pretty much character customization options. There's really not a lot in the basic PDF, which is good, because you need the Player's Handbook to actually go into the multi-classing, the feats, and all of that other stuff. So the Player's Handbook is going to have all of that information for you. Now, Part 2 or Chapter 7 of this free PDF, it pretty much goes into explaining what proficiency does, all of your ability modifiers, the major mechanic, which is advantage and disadvantage, all of your skills, how to do checks. So basically, how to play the game. It's really detailed, and this is pretty much word for word, verbatim, on what's in the Player's Handbook. Now, the combat is the same way, which is Chapter 9. It also goes into step by step as an initiative, determining surprise, turn orders, difficult terrain, movement, all of the different actions, including dash and disengage and hiding and searching. This is pretty much the same as the Player's Handbook as well. Pretty much word for word. Chapter 10 is all about spellcasting. So it basically tells you how to read a spell. What a cantrip is, what a spell level is, how to prepare spells, rituals, how to consider a spell if it's a ritual. Talks about the different verbal, somatic, and material components, spell durations, cones, cylinders. I mean, there's all the information here that you need. And this is pretty much word for word verbatim as well as the Player's Handbook, except for when you get into the types of spells like the sphere, cylinder. The Player's Handbook goes into a little bit more detail with some actual drawings of how to interpret that. And lastly is the spell lists in the basic handbook. Now the spell list here in the free basic rules is about 120-ish spells. Now I counted out 120-ish spells in the player handbook, and still there were 50 more pages of spells in the player handbook. So the player handbook has a much larger variety of spells for each of your classes, whether you're playing a cleric, a wizard, druid, or a hybrid class like a paladin or a ranger. And then it has all of your spell descriptions, which is a good thing. It goes into everything. Now the last section is the appendix conditions, and these are pretty much blinded, charmed, pretty much what happens to your character. And this is where the advantage and disadvantage mechanic mostly comes into play in D&D 5. And it basically has all of the conditions, and you can, I definitely suggest you get familiar with these because there's a lot of different mechanics going on with each condition. Last but not least, there is a 3-page character sheet, which is a very nicely detailed character sheet, and it has everything on it from hit points, proficiencies, saving throws, and everything. So my interpretation of the basic rules is of this. It's great. It's definitely enough to keep you playing, and you really don't need to, you don't really need the Player's Handbook, because you can take those 4 base races and the 4 base classes, and you can play from level 1 to level 20. But it's like an online game. If you want the variety, if you want the extra tricks, if you want the extra shiny bells and whistles, then you need to get the Player's Handbook. And that has everything else like multi-classing feats, a lot more classes, a lot more races. So, if you're enjoying D&D, why not take that next step and invest in the Player's Handbook? You can get it anywhere between $30 to $50. So that's pretty much my review of the basic rules. And like I said, down below there will be some links for the downloads themselves, the regular version that you're viewing now, and the printer-friendly version. So if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. Also, please feel free to leave a comment below. And once again, my name is David. I thank you very much for watching, and thank you for your time. And you'll see me next time when I do more reviews on the Player's Handbook, also the Monster Manual, the Horde of the Dragon Queen modules, and much more. So until next time, take it easy, good gaming, and I'll see you later.